At 8:17 on a Friday night, a woman wearing Evelyn Parker's beige coat walked into the finance department, used Evelyn's badge, and helped steal nearly $250,000. By Monday morning, the money was gone. Cash had appeared inside Evelyn's desk, and two colleagues she trusted were prepared to swear that she had planned everything. Evelyn sat alone in a cold conference room, while Detective Sarah Nolan froze the security, recording on the hooded figure. The woman had Evelyn's height, Evelyn's walk, Evelyn's coat. But Evelyn stared at the screen with the grief of someone watching her own life being stolen and said, "That woman is not me." Sarah asked how she could be so certain. Evelyn's answer changed the direction of the investigation. "Because at 8:17 that night, I was 12 miles away. But that is my coat." The company believed its camera had captured a thief. It had actually captured the final act of a carefully constructed lie. 24 minutes after the woman entered Hartwell Medical Supply, $247,000 disappeared from the company's operating account. The transfer carried Evelyn's username, her temporary password, and the approval code assigned to her department. Investigators found $9,000 in cash inside her bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of payroll files sat a flash drive containing vendor records and bank information connected to the stolen funds. Claire Monroe, Hartwell's finance director, said Evelyn had recently become anxious about money. Melissa Kane, Evelyn's closest workplace friend, claimed Evelyn had spoken bitterly about retirement and medical debt. Even the building access records showed Evelyn's badge entering after hours. Every piece pointed in the same direction, and that was precisely what troubled Sarah Nolan. Real life usually leaves disorder behind. This evidence looked arranged. Someone had not merely committed a theft. Someone had written a story, selected Evelyn as its main character, and placed each clue where the audience would be certain to find it. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Evelyn's story began long before that conference room, inside a company where loyalty was discussed as though it were part of the employee benefits package. Hartwell Medical Supply operated from a broad brick and glass building outside Columbus, Ohio. It supplied rehabilitation equipment, hospital furniture, and home care products to clinics across the Midwest. Its advertisements featured nurses helping elderly patients stand again. Its annual reports spoke about integrity, community, and family. Evelyn had believed those words. She joined Hartwell at 33 as a payroll clerk and remained for 24 years. She had seen executives arrive with confident plans and leave with framed photographs. She had trained people who later became her supervisors. Through every change, Evelyn stayed because she believed being dependable still meant something, even when dependable people were rarely the ones invited onto the stage. At 57, Evelyn was 14 months from retirement. She did not dream about luxury. She wanted to pay the final balance left from her husband Robert's medical treatment, visit her sister in Savannah, and spend ordinary afternoons with her daughter Natalie and her granddaughter Emma. Robert had died 3 years earlier after a long illness that turned their kitchen table into a place for medication schedules, insurance letters, and bills neither of them fully understood. Evelyn worked through most of it. Some mornings she arrived after sleeping less than 2 hours, corrected a payroll error affecting 70 employees, and returned home before Robert noticed how frightened she was. When he died, Hartwell became the place where time still moved according to rules. Numbers either matched or they did not. Deposits arrived on scheduled days. Problems could be traced backward until someone found the point where they began. Evelyn trusted numbers because numbers did not lower their voices when she entered a room. People did. The person Evelyn trusted most at Hartwell was Melissa Kane. For 11 years, Melissa had occupied the desk 2 rows from Evelyn's office. She remembered Robert's birthday, brought soup after his funeral, and sent messages on the first anniversary of his death when almost everyone else had stopped asking how Evelyn was doing. Every Monday morning, Melissa placed a coffee beside Evelyn's keyboard before removing her coat. Evelyn helped Melissa prepare for performance reviews, rewrote a college recommendation for Melissa's son, and once covered her workload for 3 weeks while Melissa cared for her mother. They knew each other's routines so well that Melissa could tell when Evelyn had skipped breakfast by the way she organized her pens. Evelyn knew when Melissa was worried because she twisted the small silver ring on her right hand. That friendship mattered because Evelyn had never been careless with trust. She offered it slowly, after years of observation. Melissa had passed every test until the week when passing no longer benefited her. The first irregularity appeared on a Tuesday morning in a payment batch Evelyn almost approved without hesitation. One invoice belonged to a vendor called Lakeview Clinical Logistics. The company had billed Hartwell $38,400 for expedited transportation of rehabilitation beds from Indiana to Ohio. The amount was not impossible, but the supporting documents looked strangely clean. There were no delivery signatures, fuel adjustments, or warehouse confirmation numbers. Evelyn searched older payments and found 6 more Lakeview invoices totaling $247,000. Each one had been divided into amounts low enough to avoid additional board approval. Every invoice had been authorized by Claire. Evelyn checked the vendor's tax identification number and found that it did not match the name on the account. The listed mailing address led to an office suite that had been empty for months. She printed the records, placed them inside a blue folder, and wrote one sentence across the top page. Vendor cannot be independently verified. It was a simple note. To the people receiving the money, it was a threat. Evelyn first showed the invoice to Melissa. She expected curiosity.
This stays strictly
Instead,
between us.
Melissa stared at the vendor name for several seconds and then looked toward Claire's glass office. When Evelyn asked whether she recognized Lakeview, Melissa said she had never heard of it. Her voice sounded normal, but her fingers moved toward the silver ring. Evelyn noticed. She always noticed. Melissa quickly suggested that the payments might relate to a confidential project and warned Evelyn not to create unnecessary trouble so close to retirement. The remark unsettled her. Evelyn had not mentioned retirement. Later that afternoon, she brought the folder to Claire, who glanced at only the first page before smiling. Claire said
Evelyn,
Lakeview supported a private expansion project and that Thomas Vale, Hartwell's chief financial officer, had already reviewed the arrangement. Evelyn asked why the tax number did not match. Claire replied that corporate restructuring often created temporary inconsistencies. Then she leaned back and asked a question that had nothing to do with the invoice. How much longer did you say you had here? The next 2 days were designed to feel ordinary. Claire asked Aaron Blake, Hartwell's 39-year-old systems administrator, to reset Evelyn's password for what she described as an external audit test. Aaron objected because no audit request had been filed. Claire reminded him that finance controlled the audit schedule and told him Thomas had approved it. Aaron created a temporary password and sent it to Claire through an internal message. He later deleted the message, not because he understood the plan, but because Claire had marked it confidential and instructed him to remove the exchange after confirming access. In another part of the building, Melissa borrowed Evelyn's employee badge, claiming she needed to retrieve archived payroll records from a restricted room. Evelyn handed it over without concern. Melissa returned 10 minutes later. During those 10 minutes, the badge was copied. The people preparing to frame Evelyn did not need to steal her identity all at once. They collected it piece by piece, using the access friendship had given them. On Friday afternoon, Melissa carried 2 coffees into Evelyn's office. As she set one down, her hand struck the cup and sent it across Evelyn's blouse and the sleeve of her cardigan. Melissa apologized repeatedly and insisted Evelyn go home early to change. The weekly reconciliation could wait until Monday, she said. Evelyn resisted until Melissa reminded her that Natalie was expecting her for dinner. The weather had warmed, so Evelyn left her beige trench coat hanging behind the office door. Before leaving, she unlocked the bottom drawer, removed the blue folder, and placed it beneath a stack of reports for Melissa. Everything is here, she said. If Claire asks, tell her I'm checking Lakeview myself on Monday. Melissa promised no one would touch it. Evelyn believed her because 11 years of kindness stood behind that promise. At 5:42 p.m., Evelyn walked out through the main lobby. She did not know it was the last time she would leave Hartwell as a trusted employee. At 7:56 that evening, a dark sport utility vehicle turned into the rear parking area. The main building cameras did not cover the loading entrance clearly because one unit had been repositioned months earlier. At 8:03, Claire parked near the delivery doors. Melissa sat beside her with Evelyn's coat folded across her knees. She put it on, raised the hood, and accepted the copied badge from Claire. At 8:07, Thomas arrived in a separate vehicle carrying a small banker's box. The three entered through the loading door using Thomas's management key. At 8:17, Melissa crossed the finance hallway where the company's clearest camera recorded her. She shortened her steps to resemble Evelyn's walk and kept her face angled down. The copied badge opened the restricted area. From a distance, the image was convincing. Melissa had watched Evelyn for 11 years. That night, she used what she had learned to become her. At 8:21, Evelyn's temporary password opened the vendor payment system. At 8:29, $247,000 moved from Hartwell's operating account to Lakeview Clinical Logistics. At 8:34, someone downloaded vendor files onto a flash drive. At 8:38, Claire telephoned Aaron and reported that a security camera feed had frozen. Aaron logged into the server remotely, restarted part of the system, and created a 6-minute gap in the hallway recording. He believed he was correcting a technical problem. Inside the building, Thomas placed $9,000 in cash inside Evelyn's desk, while Claire removed the pages exposing Lakeview from the blue folder. Melissa added the flash drive and a printed account number beneath Evelyn's reports. Then they left the remaining folder where investigators would find it. Their plan depended on abundance. One suspicious clue might create doubt. 5 clues pointing toward the same woman could look like certainty. They assumed no investigator would ask why an experienced financial employee would leave every piece of evidence in the office she knew would be searched first. At 8:46, Melissa left through the loading entrance, still wearing Evelyn's coat. Claire followed, carrying the missing pages from the blue folder. Thomas exited last. He wiped the door handle and checked the parking area before they separated. The entire operation lasted less than an hour. Evelyn, 12 miles away at Natalie's home, was helping
Saturn
Emma finish a cardboard model of the solar system for school.
It looks wonderful,
Emma. A photograph taken
Thanks,
at 8:12
Grandma.
showed Evelyn at the dining table holding a painted version of Saturn. Another photograph, taken at 8:31, showed her cutting a strip of paper while Emma laughed beside her. The images helped establish Evelyn's location, but they did not immediately clear her. Investigators could argue that she had arranged the transfer in advance or worked with someone inside Hartwell. The frame was built to survive an alibi. Evelyn did not need to be physically present if the evidence could suggest she had directed the crime from somewhere else. On Monday morning, Evelyn arrived at 7:38 and found her computer disconnected. Claire, Thomas, and a human resources representative were waiting in the conference room. Melissa sat near the window with both hands clasped around the silver ring. Thomas began by saying that Hartwell had discovered a serious financial loss. Claire placed printed access logs on the table and asked Evelyn whether anyone else knew her password. Evelyn said no. That answer was technically true because she did not know Claire had ordered the reset. When Detective Sarah Nolan arrived, the office search had already begun. The cash was discovered first, then the flash drive, then the account details. Each new item changed the faces around Evelyn. People who had known her for years stopped looking directly at her. Claire covered her mouth as though the discovery had shocked her. Thomas lowered his head. Melissa began to cry.
I have never
Evelyn
seen that
watched
before.
them perform disbelief while she was still trying to understand what she had been accused of doing. The most damaging evidence did not come from the desk. It came from people. Claire told Sarah that Evelyn had become increasingly worried about money after Robert's illness. Melissa said Evelyn once complained that Hartwell had taken the best years of her life and owed her more than a retirement luncheon. Both statements contained pieces of real conversations. Evelyn had discussed medical bills with Melissa. She had joked about the company owing her a better cake after seeing another employee's retirement party. The remarks had been ordinary when spoken. Repeated in an investigation room, they became the motive. Another colleague remembered Evelyn asking how closely vendor accounts were monitored. She had asked because of Lakeview, but without the missing pages, the question sounded suspicious. The frame worked because it did not invent an entirely different Evelyn. It rearranged true details until they described a woman no one recognized. That is what made the accusation so difficult to fight. Every lie had been fastened to something real. By noon, Hartwell suspended Evelyn without pay. A security officer escorted her through the lobby while employees watched from behind glass walls. Someone recorded the scene on a phone. Before evening, a blurred version appeared in a neighborhood social media group with the claim that a longtime employee had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from a medical company. Evelyn's name was not included, but enough details were visible for former coworkers to identify her. Natalie arrived at Evelyn's house carrying groceries and fear. She asked whether there was anything Evelyn had kept from her. The question broke something that the conference room had not. Evelyn understood why her daughter asked. The evidence looked complete. Still, after decades of teaching Natalie that character mattered, Evelyn heard doubt in her own child's voice. She answered that she had taken nothing. Natalie apologized immediately, but the words could not be returned to the moment before they were spoken. Evelyn spent that night sitting at Robert's side of the kitchen table, surrounded by bills that had now become evidence against her. Sarah Nolan reviewed the case file alone. She had investigated employee theft before, and guilty people often made mistakes. Yet Evelyn's supposed mistakes seemed arranged for maximum discovery. The cash was in the first drawer the company searched. The flash drive contained direct links to the stolen vendor account. The handwritten note imitating Evelyn's writing used phrases taken from standard payroll documents. The badge record and computer login occurred minutes apart. It was possible Evelyn had become careless. It was also possible someone wanted the investigation to end quickly. Sarah returned to the hallway footage and studied the hooded woman frame by frame. The figure's height was close. The coat was Evelyn's. But the woman carried her weight differently when turning. Sarah asked Hartwell for all camera recordings, server logs, and access records. Thomas said the company had already provided everything available. His confidence might have ended the matter if Aaron's name had not appeared beside the 6 missing minutes. Aaron initially denied remembering the password reset. When Sarah showed him the system log, he admitted Claire had ordered it. He also admitted deleting her instruction. That made him appear involved. His administrator account had restarted the cameras at 8:38, creating the gap that allowed evidence to be planted without a clear hallway record. Claire told investigators Aaron may have been working with Evelyn. For several hours, the case seemed to expand around him. Then Sarah obtained his phone records. Claire had called Aaron 1 minute before the camera interruption. The remote access log showed he was at home nearly 20 miles away. His laptop activity matched a routine restart, not an intentional deletion. More importantly, the server preserved a record that Claire had opened the camera status page earlier that evening using Thomas's office computer. Aaron had lied because he feared being fired for violating procedure. His lie damaged his credibility, but it also exposed the person who had placed him inside the story. Melissa's first interview had lasted 18 minutes. Her second lasted nearly 2 hours. She insisted she returned Evelyn's badge without copying it. She said the beige coat might have been taken by anyone. She denied knowing Lakeview. Yet access records showed Melissa entered the restricted archive room during the 10 minutes she held the badge, even though the files she claimed to retrieve were stored elsewhere. Sarah also found that Melissa had received 3 payments from a consulting company connected to Claire. The amounts were small enough to resemble freelance bookkeeping income. Melissa described them as personal work completed after hours. She could not identify a single client. Still, suspicion was not proof, and the main hallway recording concealed her face. Sarah needed something independent of Hartwell's network, something Claire and Thomas could not control. Evelyn supplied it through a memory that had seemed unimportant when it formed. On Thursday afternoon, she noticed a small camera blinking above the loading dock. The camera did not belong to Hartwell. An insurance company had installed it after several overnight shipments went missing from the property. Its recordings were stored on a separate cloud account managed by a regional shipping contractor. Hartwell's executives could view live images during deliveries, but they could not erase archived footage. Sarah contacted the contractor and requested the recording from Friday evening. At first, a supervisor said the camera faced only the loading area and probably would not show anyone entering the building. The archive was scheduled to overwrite older footage within days.
We are in the archive.
Sarah asked him to preserve it anyway. Several hours later, a technician recovered the file. The first minutes showed an empty stretch of pavement under a weak security light. Then headlights entered the frame. Sarah paused the video when the driver's door opened. Claire stepped from the dark sport utility vehicle. On the passenger side, Melissa emerged carrying a familiar beige coat. Sarah watched without speaking. Melissa put on Evelyn's coat, raised the hood, and accepted a copied badge from Claire. The camera angle captured Melissa's face clearly before she turned toward the loading door. 4 minutes later, another vehicle arrived. Thomas stepped out carrying a banker's box and a flash drive. He greeted Claire, opened the building with a management key, and led both women inside. At 8:46, Melissa returned first, still dressed as Evelyn. Claire followed with the blue folder beneath her arm. Thomas came last and wiped the metal door handle with a handkerchief before placing the banker's box inside his trunk. The recording did not hint at what happened. It showed it. The main hallway camera had captured a disguise. The loading dock camera captured the people constructing it. Sarah replayed the footage for Evelyn in the same conference room where the accusation began. Evelyn did not look at Claire or Thomas. She looked only at Melissa. For 11 years, Melissa had listened to Evelyn speak about grief, debt, retirement, and fear. She knew which coat Evelyn wore, where she kept her badge, how she walked when tired, and what financial pressure could be shaped into motive. The security video turned every private confidence into part of the plan. Evelyn watched Melissa adjust the hood before entering the building and understood that the betrayal had required rehearsal. Melissa had not made one frightened decision in a single moment. She had borrowed the badge, encouraged Evelyn to leave, protected the coat, removed the documents, and then used Evelyn's body language to walk toward a camera. When Sarah asked whether Evelyn wanted to stop the recording, she said no. She needed to see the full sequence because the people who framed her had depended on everyone seeing only selected pieces. That had been their power. The second camera removed it by restoring the part of the story they thought they had erased. The loading dock footage cleared Evelyn, but it also gave investigators authority to search deeper. Lakeview Clinical Logistics was traced to a shell company connected to Thomas's brother-in-law. Over 3 years, Hartwell had paid more than $1.8 million to Lakeview and 4 related vendors for transportation, consulting, and equipment that had never been delivered. Thomas created the structure. Claire approved payments below review limits and altered supporting documents. Melissa changed vendor records and redirected routine questions before they reached auditors. Her payments were a share of the scheme. Evelyn became dangerous because she checked the tax number and preserved the invoices in a folder outside the electronic system. The final $247,000 transfer was never intended as the beginning of the theft. It was meant to become the crime that exposed Evelyn and explained the earlier losses. Once she was blamed, every suspicious payment could be attached to the trusted payroll manager preparing to retire. Recovered messages showed how little loyalty existed among the people who had demanded it from Evelyn. Thomas had prepared documents suggesting Claire controlled Lakeview without his knowledge. Claire kept copies of messages that could place most responsibility on Melissa. Melissa had recorded one conversation because she suspected Claire would abandon her if investigators came close. Each conspirator believed someone else would become the final sacrifice. Evelyn had been selected because they assumed she was the easiest person to isolate, a widowed woman with medical debt, no executive title, and a reputation for avoiding conflict. They confused restraint with weakness. They also believed the company's authority would be stronger than her denial. For several days, they were right. Hartwell's badge logs, passwords, personnel files, and security recordings all appeared to speak with one voice. The forgotten camera mattered because it stood outside that system. It did not know who held power. It recorded the loading dock, the vehicles, the code, and the truth without choosing whom to protect. Melissa eventually admitted her role. She said Claire told her the false vendor scheme had already been discovered and that helping blame Evelyn was the only way to avoid prosecution. She claimed Thomas had threatened to expose an earlier bookkeeping change she made for Claire. Some of that may have been true. It did not explain why Melissa supplied details from Evelyn's private life or why she accepted money for months. Her cooperation reduced the charges she faced, but it did not restore what she had taken. Thomas and Claire were charged with fraud, conspiracy, evidence tampering, and obstruction. Aaron was not charged, though Hartwell disciplined him for violating security procedures. The company's board placed several executives on leave and hired outside investigators. The disaster had grown through controls senior employees could override: vendor approvals, temporary passwords, badge access, and internal camera systems. Every safeguard existed on paper. The people entrusted with enforcing them had learned how to turn them into evidence against someone else. Hartwell issued a public statement clearing Evelyn and acknowledging that evidence had been planted. The company restored her retirement benefits, paid the wages withheld during her suspension, and offered a confidential settlement. Thomas's attorney argued that the footage did not prove who initiated the scheme. Claire's attorney suggested she had acted under pressure. Melissa wrote that she had been afraid. Evelyn listened as each person described fear as though she had experienced none. She had feared arrest, losing her home, losing her daughter's trust, and seeing 24 years of honest work reduced to a
appreciate the
blurred
offer,
recording.
Mr. Chairman.
Yet she had not placed another
But my
person
decision
inside her
remains final.
coat to escape those fears. Hartwell offered Evelyn her position back. The board chairman called personally and promised a redesigned office, a formal apology, and authority to help rebuild the finance department. Evelyn thanked him. Then she refused. Returning would have meant walking past the same glass walls where people watched security escort her away. Several months later, Evelyn opened a small bookkeeping consultancy in a quiet office above a neighborhood law firm. Her first clients were a church food pantry, a family-owned pharmacy, and a nonprofit that helped older women return to work. The income was modest at first, but the work belonged to her. She kept the original blue folder in a locked cabinet. The missing pages were eventually returned as evidence, marked with case numbers and fingerprints. The first camera showed a woman in Evelyn's coat and encouraged everyone to complete the story for themselves. The second camera showed Claire arriving, Melissa changing clothes, and Thomas opening the door. One recording captured an appearance. The other captured preparation. Between them stood the difference between accusation and truth. Evelyn spent 24 years believing loyalty would protect her. In the end, loyalty failed. Records, memory, and a forgotten camera did not. The people who framed her expected a quiet woman approaching retirement to collapse beneath the authority of passwords, badges, and confident testimony. They never understood that Evelyn did not need to speak louder than their accusations. She needed the truth to remain somewhere they could not reach it. It remained above a loading dock, blinking into the darkness, recording a doorway no one thought mattered. So what would you have done in Evelyn's position? Could you forgive Melissa after watching her borrow your identity and use your private pain to make a lie believable? Or did putting on Evelyn's coat cross a line that no apology could repair? Share your answer in the comments, because this story is larger than one company and one stolen payment. It asks how quickly a respected life can be rewritten when institutions trust convenient evidence more than the person standing before them. It also asks whether an apology means anything when it arrives only after proof makes denial impossible. Evelyn received back pay, restored benefits, and a public correction. She also lost the workplace she expected to leave with dignity. Justice cleared her record. It could not return the final 14 months of the career she had planned. And that may be the most difficult truth of all. Sometimes the camera changes everything, but it cannot change everything back.